God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Tonight's meeting, we have an appointment scheduled at 7:05 with the Southeastern Regional Vocational School budget to discuss the budget. At 7:30, we have a public hearing regarding the New England Revolution application for 2008 games. 7:45, we have an appointment with the Cable TV Advisory Committee to discuss their ascertainment report. At 8:45, we have a continued public hearing on the liquor license regulations. And at 9:15, we have a scheduled appointment with the town manager to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing collective bargaining. Before that time, we'll get to our action items and old business and new business. It being 7 o'clock, we have a traditional citizens input session. Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on citizens input? Hearing none, we have an appointment scheduled for 7:05 with Southeastern. Sir, we met a minute ago. Come on up. Please. Welcome. And if you can just give Pauline, please, your name.
Yeah, my name is Dave Deegan, assistant principal at Southeastern Regional High School. Two reasons why I'm here tonight is one is our school committee is in session. One of our representatives, Mr. Green, died last week, and the superintendent, they moved the school committee meeting. And two, I'm doing a finance internship with the superintendent, and part of my internship is that I present at some town meetings and selectmen and FinCom.
Never too old to be an intern.
Never too old.
That's not to say that you're old now.
No, didn't take it personally.
Okay, why don't you tell us what you have?
Yeah, did everybody receive, I don't know whether everybody's received a copy of our...
We Andy's office got it into our package.
All right, I'd like to start by going through the process that we used to create our budget for this year.
Please.
The first thing we did, and we have a brand new superintendent, as you know, Mr. Lopes, and right from the beginning, he wanted us to look at the way we do our finances as a business. And so we started with the revenue side, and we looked at, where do we gain revenue from? And we know we get it from Chapter 70 state funding, local assessments, regional transportation money, and other income, which is from the TI, interest, Medicaid. And then we went through a process of balancing the budget. And we used a zero balance budget process where it started at each classroom level, each teacher, each department looked at their own budget. They created their own budget. They worked with their directors or supervisors to create their budget. And then it was forwarded to the superintendent. If you look at the first page, if you flip over the first page, and what happened was Mr. Lopes sat down with every single department, and we went through every line on the items. We talked about increases, decreases, and people did a wonderful job, but we were $2.5 million over. And so then the cutting started.
Dave, just can I ask you, it's a 9th to 12th grade,
9th to 12th
vocational high school in Easton,
Yep.
serves the area. How many students do you have?
Currently we have 1329.
1,320, so it's a good-sized school.
High school, yes.
And Foxboro students are eligible to attend.
Yep.
And how many are from Foxboro?
We currently have 29.
And is our local assessment based on how many students we send to Southeastern?
Well, your assessment is created on how many students you have in Foxboro, and then a percentage is sent to Southeastern.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. And so we started the budget cutting process, and so if you flip over 2 pages, it starts with the process of where the cuts were. And these are cuts not cuts from a year ago. These are cuts, maybe they might be in a different order. It starts with balance in the budget. Yeah. So they might be a little bit different order in their packet. And we went through each budget center, and we've broken down the budget centers now, and looking at the money that was asked in each budget center and where we could cut in each budget center. So for example, looking at technology, we're looking at things like going to laser printers and printer centers rather than inkjets on every desk. We didn't buy any new smart boards this year, even though several departments asked for new smart boards. Under facility and capital, looking at daily usage of gas and oil. We run burners for both. And so we check prices every day on the gas and oil, and we run whatever's cheaper for that day. We have, I believe it's in 2014, we're supposed to have a wastewater treatment plant in place. And right now, we're trying to not do that. It'd be a big capital expense. And so what we're trying to do is eliminate the use of water over the next several years by 50%. And if we do that, we might be able to get without doing that big capital expenditure. And if you look down the lower of that page, currently we have 4 full-time substitutes. We're going to all on-call subs next year, which will save the benefit package on those 4 people. And so we're looking at cost-cutting measures, and it goes through the next couple of pages of things that we've cut along the way, each part of our thing. Athletics, several of the programs asked for new uniforms. We only added uniforms where we absolutely needed them. We've added 2, and if you go down to the bottom of the page, we've added 2 staff for next year. We have a brand new criminal justice program that we're adding for next year. And we're also adding a social studies teacher. Most of our social studies teachers carry about a load of 300 students, and so we're trying to get those numbers down a little bit. And the bottom line was a $20,513,000 budget. And then the next page is the breakdown of our budget. The net school spending money, which comes from DOE number, is $18,651,251, less the Chapter 70 aid we get from the state of $12,045,030, leaves the local assessment of $6,606,221. And then the next piece is the transportation. That regional transportation, we have to transport all of our students. This year it's being funded at 90%. And so of our cost of $1,169,839, a large part of that is being taken up. The state is paying for that. This has risen over the last couple of years. At one point it was as low as 72% a couple of years ago. Members of our committee have worked very hard on getting that number back up, and statewide they've worked. So the above assessment is $116,471. Our capital expenditure is $192,000. This has remained pretty stagnant for the last 7 or 8 years. I believe Mr. Lopes said he went back 8 years and it was still the same number. And then above net school spending, above what the state said we should get, most schools are running at around 120% of net school spending. We looked at this number and we said, we're $499,910 above net school spending. And so superintendent worked with the numbers, and through the following 4 items: the E&D account, he reduced it $262,000. Through tuition, out of district tuition, he reduced it another $150,000. Interest income $42,000, and Medicaid reimbursement $45,000. So what he's done is taken the above net school spending and paid for it within district at no additional cost to any of our communities. So our final budget is $20,513,000. $13 million is from state aid. About $500,000 is from district income, and almost $7 million is local assessments. If you flip the page, it kind of looks across the total numbers, student numbers for all of our sending towns. You can see that Southeastern went up 22 students last year, and that's part of the reason that our foundation budget went up about $1.5 million, because we've added 22 students. Foxboro went up 2, from 27 to 29, and it's 2.2% of our total student numbers.
I think that it would be fair to say that Brockton takes the best advantage out of all the towns around.
Yeah, we as you can see, 6 out of 10 students come from Brockton. So yes, we have a lot of Brockton students. I think we're kind of a mix of an inner-city school and a town school all in one.
The assessment is based on Foxboro's total enrollment, or the number of percentage of students from Foxborough that attend?
Total enrollment.
Total enrollment.
Well, the assessment is based upon Foxborough is assessed, and then from that, Southeastern receives their share.
So Foxborough has, for example, 1,000 students in its high school, and Brockton has 4,000 students in its high school. Is Brockton assessed 4 times as much as Foxborough?
It's based on wealth, aggregate wealth.
Okay.
And so Brockton is a much poorer community, so they get a lot more Chapter 70 money, where, and they base it on, and there's a formula in the back, and I can talk about the formula a little bit with you. And
Does that, the state aid number compared to what we get locally seems high? Is that a component of that state aid number?
Well, each town is assessed on its own ability to pay, and so they look at 2 things: property value and wealth of the community, and that's what they base it on. And so, but I'll get to that in a little
Sure.
bit if you could. if you flip the page, it looks at all of our towns across the chart. And Foxboro is right in the middle, number 99. And it says the FY09 foundation budget is $406,000. Of that, $133,000 is state aid, and $273,000 is the minimum contribution. Those numbers are state numbers and not our numbers. We don't make those numbers. That's the numbers we get. That's the numbers you get. The net transportation is about $2,500, and the capital is $4190 for a total of $284.16, which is an increase of almost $30,000 over last year. The top numbers, the state aid and the minimum contribution, are based upon the formula that the state gives us. The net transportation cost and the capital are based on per pupil. If you flip to the next page, it's a big round thing. There you go. And that kind of just breaks the same cost, but it kind of compares last year to this year. And the things that are outside of the foundation budget, last year it was almost $8,600 above that. This year we're at $6,700 above that number. And again, those numbers are only the transportation money and the capital money. As you can see, last year there was an additional operation cost that we included last year. We paid for that with district income this year. There is no above foundation money this year. And if you flip to, and this talks about what you were asking of how the assessment is figured out. And what they do is they figure out, this is figured out for the town of Foxboro, and they go through several calculations of how they get to that. The first they look at the property value for Foxboro, and they look at, the property value is $2,713,000,000, and they have this percentage, and this percentage is the same for every community. And what they do is they figure out the total wealth in the state, and they back into this number, and then they assess it to each community. And they do the same thing for income. In the property value, they go back 2 years. The income, they go back 3 years. And then they come up with this line 7 of how much the community should be able to pay, what they should be able to afford. Then they work with the foundation budget, which is another number the state creates on their own. And then they go from there of figuring out how much your target share should be, and how much your final number should be. There's some good news in all of this. Two things. And the way I look at the budget, it's a win-win for Foxborough. One is there's no above assessment number. There's no money above assessment that we're asking for. And also, you're moving towards target share. And I don't know whether Mr. Lopes explained it last year or Mr. Hager the year before, but basically, Foxborough has been paying a little bit too much, and some of the poor communities haven't been paying quite enough. And so what they try to do is move you towards target share. The problem is they haven't fully funded it. Last year it was supposed to be at 40%, this year it's 60%. In actuality, last year was at 30%, this year is only at 33%. And if it was fully funded, you are, you regain back $217,000 through target share. If it was fully funded at 60%, you would have received back $394,000 in target share money. So, the state hasn't given you $177,000. And one thing that Mr. Lopes wanted me to convey to you was that he is going to be at the Day on the Hill meeting with Teresa Murray and other people looking at those numbers and why aren't they at 60%? Because it's supposed to be 80% next year, and if they fund it at 40%, you're getting half of what you should have received back in target share. Poor communities are going in the opposite direction. They are paying more. I believe that Brockton's went up $1 million, where yours went down a little bit. So that is our basic overview of the budget. I can answer any questions that you might have.
We'll open it up to questions then, Mark.
He answered both, thank you.
Okay.
Rob?
Actually, I appreciate the detailed explanation. We've sat here year after year, and Mr. Gerard always did a wonderful job of patiently answering my questions, and I think I've got a pretty good understanding. It's nice to see that they're continuing with the equitization of the process, and I know we're still not there. We're still paying considerably more per pupil to go there than we do in our own school system. But it is nice to see that we're still going in the right direction, so thank you for taking the time to come out.
Thank you.
Linda? No questions, Paul?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
I think there was a comprehensive overview. What I've heard you say is that you're asking us to pay what the state has determined we should pay. And you're able to run your school with that budget.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we need to take a vote on this? Or is it just information?
Information because
You've already budgeted the number.
it's a line item in the town budget, so
Okay.
we're going to finalize town budget. Bring that to you at the first meeting in April.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Appreciate your coming in.
Thank you.
Our next appointment is a public hearing, so why don't we want to do an action item or two, Andy? That clock's actually a few minutes fast, according to my cell phone.
Well, I'm not changing it, so.
Go ahead, Andy.
The first item on your list are the approval of the minutes of March 11th.
I did read the minutes. Pauline, I only had one missing comma, which changed a $3,000 number into a $3 million number. The CIP budget at the bottom of page 2, that period, is actually a comma.
Oh, okay.
Not vouching for the number, but it looks like it's probably $1 million. Anybody have any other changes on the minutes? Hearing none, I vote that we approve the minutes of the Selectmen's Meeting for March 11, 2008 with the comma addition.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None?
Item 2 is an invoice from Attorney Epstein for his services for the month of February. Cable licensing process, and the amount of $2,450.
Chairman, I make a motion that we approve payment of invoice 16491 to Peter J. Epstein Esquire in the amount of $2,450.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? No?
Item 3 is an invoice from Town Council for the month of February. Invoice total is $935.42. I recommend approval.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve payment of invoice 14983 to Gelman and Bushman PC in the amount of $935.42.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None?
Item 4 is a reappointment to the Board of Registrars. Claire B. Norton, term is up for reappointment for 3 years.
Usually, we look for the applicant to signify willingness. I'm pretty sure Claire's interested in this position. I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Claire Norton to the Board of Registrars for a term expiring April 30th, 2011.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None?
Item 5 is a reappointment also, and this is for the Industrial Finance Authority. And Barnett D. Overett is up for reappointment.
And Barney, of course, is stepping down from the Board of Appeals, but he wants to continue in his position here. If we talk to him about that?
I haven't personally, no.
Well, he has been serving on the Industrial Development Finance Authority. Anybody have any reason to believe Barney doesn't want to continue to serve in that capacity? I would like to make a motion that we approve Barnett Overett for a term until April 1st, 2013 on the Industrial Development Finance Authority. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Who's this next one?
We have renewal appointments for the Foxboro Cultural Council, and we have 3 citizens up for renewal. Pauline Hadley,
I think
I'm out.
we called him in for a,
Molly Canna, and Joan Stafford.
On this? Can you engage in discussion? We're assuming that you're interested in continuing to serve.
we didn't ask anybody else, so I don't think we should.
I'd
ask
like to
her.
make a motion that we approve Pauline Hadley, Amelia Kana, and Joan Stafford for positions on the Cultural Council for terms expiring March 28, 2011.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you, Pauline.
Item 7, the Recreation Board is recommended the board appoint as alternate members to the Recreation Board 3 residents, Heather Harding, Beth Bayek, and Ellen Garber.
We'll do up the approvals tonight. We'll vote it, I mean, these are ready to go.
Right.
These just came in. Generally, we ask the rec board to recruit their own members, and the rec board has recruited or got 3 new prospective members and has voted to ask us to appoint them. In light of that, I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Heather Harding, Beth Bayek, and Ellen Garber as
Alternates.
alternate members of the Board of Recreation.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None?
Item 8, we have a letter from Chief and Debbie McGrath from Keep Kids Alive in Foxboro. They're asking permission to use the Common on Thursday, May 1st, from 6 to 8 p.m. For the Keep Kids Alive Drive 25 program.
Your office usually makes sure that the scheduling is clear before we even get them. I'd like to make a motion that we allow Chief O'Leary and Debbie McGrath to use the Foxborough Common on Thursday, May 1st, 2008, from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. for the Keep Kids Alive Drive 25 national campaign.
Second.
Any discussion? Linda?
Chief, do you have a rain date or anything for this, or?
No,
we're gonna go
because
with
we're just tying it into a national program.
Oh, it is, so it's gotta be that
It
day.
has to be that.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None?
Item 9 is just a meeting information invitation, if any of the board members want to go. MMA is having a legislative breakfast session to update the area officials, and they've got several dates and locations to pick from.
Are you able to go?
I haven't sent that in yet. I will look at, I may be able to go to the Franklin meeting.
There is they're good to take in. I know I have a conflict. That's in the morning. If anybody can go, that would be great.
Ten is a letter from State Lottery Commission notifying the board. They have now approved a new game, Keno to Go, and outlining what they've approved and locations in Foxborough where the game can be played. There's no need to take action on it unless the board objects to this new game, and then we'd have to file an objection against this.
Well, thank goodness we've kept casinos out of the Commonwealth. Yes.
Anybody have an objection to
Keno or go-go.
Keno on the go?
I don't think it matters that we object.
Not enough gambling for this world, is there?
Oh, my goodness.
Okay. No objection having been made.
And the last item on the list is a memo from Robert Swanson, Highway Superintendent, regarding the request to install signs for the Pan Am Bike Challenge. He outlines his concern that these would be permanent signs
Yeah.
in place year-round, not just for the event. And he's concerned about the narrowness of the street and lack of sight distance. And
Well, Bob's objected. It's a once-a-year run through Foxborough. It may be inconvenient for them to post temporary signs, but I mean, I'm persuaded that we don't want to put permanent bike route signs on Lakeview. Anybody want to?
I tend to agree with you. Don't we have enough signs in this town?
I'm just concerned that we'd be starting a precedence, and, you know, we have other races in town too that come through, and that was my concern.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
I'm a big supporter of the Pan Mass Challenge, but certainly hear what Mr. Swanson is saying, and I think Lakeview is a very narrow road. It might give the appearance that we have a sanctioned bike route, and that's certainly not what we want to do. So I'm not sure how to go about this. If our other communities faced with this situation, I'm sure they're going down scenic paths in other communities. Are they able to put up temporary signs?
We haven't
don't know.
talked with anybody else, Bob.
Is there anybody with PMS Challenge that we can speak with to get some?
I think a temporary sign would work better, because it wouldn't be ignored. If you put a year-round sign up, I think it's gonna be taken granted that it's just there, and you put the temporary sign, could bring more of alert to what's up and coming, you know?
Well, I think this is more of a promotional piece for them.
Well, that may be, they're requesting permanent signs, there doesn't seem to be a lot of support for it on the board, so I wouldn't make a motion to do anything. So we'll pass.
Okay.
Anything to add on to the action list?
I've got a couple of other items.
We got two or three more minutes anyway.
The simple one first.
Yeah,
Just
so we'll do the long one last.
another invitation to the board of a Selectmen's Meeting to be held in Needham on Wednesday, April 2nd. If any member wants to go, just let us know, and we'll file the forms.
Okay, thank you. Is that we're gonna
Save the
take some time?
golfing here.
That's a lot
I
of
need
reading.
Bob to read the vote into the record.
Okay, well, why don't we, the clock in the room says 7:31. The cell phone says 7:28. So if you add them up, shake them up, throw them together, it's 7:30. So it being 7:30, my math is off, but that's okay. I don't have to take the SATs anymore. Bob, we have a public hearing. Would you read the public hearing notice?
I will. The Board of Selectmen, acting as a local licensing authority pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 181, and Section 183A, and Chapter 136, Section 4, Town of Foxborough Revised General Bylaws, Article 5, Section 6, and also Stadium Rules and Regulations, will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, March 25th, beginning at 7:30 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, 40 South Street, to review the application submitted by MPS LLC for the New England Revolution Games, including potential international matches and potential playoff games. All events are proposed for Gillette Stadium. All applications for these events are on file at the Office of the Selectmen. All interested parties are welcome to attend. Published.
James Thrash asked me to bring the meeting to order. He'll be out for a second. Anybody interested, please come up. I see Dan. Would you like to bring the children up with you, Dan?
Is that the security for the night?
Just came from karate, so
Stadium
maybe.
advisory want to approach, or? Dan, go ahead. It's your game.
Great. This is our application for the 2008 New England Revolution regular season potential home playoff games and up to 5 international playoff matches. The schedule is attached to the application. Typically, each year there's a small number of changes to the schedule when our concert season starts to develop, and we get our football schedule. So there have been a couple of changes already are in progress with the schedule, and our protocol is as soon as there's a change, we notify town manager, chief of police and chief fire, lieutenant state police, Bill Caspara as well. Traffic pattern, I can save that to the last if it's all right. Seating plan has been expanded. One modification we made this year, we increased the north end zone general admission seats. That section, those seats are our fan club called the Midnight Riders, and they I don't know if you've been to a Revolution game. They stand and play drums most of the game. So a lot of the fans like the GA nature of the seating, but don't want to be right next to the beating of the drums the entire game. So we've expanded a couple of sections over so they can have a quieter presence there. Stadium gates are 2 hours prior to kickoff. Estimated attendance is average about 15,000. Closing time is an hour after the game. Ticket prices range from $37 to $19. Again, all reserved seats except for the seats in the north end zone, about a total of 6,400 seats. The big match that we know of now is the August 30th match. Anticipate about 40,000 people. That's against the LA Galaxy, the David Beckham.
Is he going to play
Match.
this year?
I hope so.
I think they hope so.
So yeah, no fireworks planned at all. We've met with the chief on that. Right now, we tentatively have scheduled 2 international matches so far on 7/13 and 7/16.
Those draw pretty well.
Yeah, these are Mexican club teams, and MLS teams, we think about between 5 and 10,000 people. The Sunday night and then a Wednesday night.
Not as many as I thought, but okay.
Seating chart, I think, has been attached as well. Again, we just use the east side of the stadium with the one end zone, and a small number of sponsors and player families up in the yellow section up in the club. The west side and the south end zone are closed sections. I have these maps, Andy. I can give you these copies for each member, but we have two different parking plans. The first plan is we use P1, P2, and P8. P8 comes in from the south. P1 and P2 handle the north traffic. This is the pre-August plan, where there are 2 pages each.
These are 2 pages. Okay. Well, now you gotta solve this combined.
Okay.
So the north part, we try to have the fans in the north park in the north, so they egress that way. South, the same thing. When the Lifestyle Mall opens in around August, we will be mixing Revolution parking and retail parking, and that's the large blue map on the east side of the Route 1. Those are no tailgating lots. We'll continue, and once the Lifestyle Center opens, those will continue to be non-tailgating lots. We'll still have designated some season ticket holder parking on the east and west. If fans want to come to the Revolution game and tailgate, they'll come in P10, which is right across the street. There's a central crossing point of Route 1.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
That's it.
Comprehensive as usual, Dan. Andy, you had a chance to look over the application?
It's all in order.
Everything is in order. This is a public hearing. Mark, questions?
I just answered it. It was about the public tailgating, and now I understand why.
Okay.
There was the retailing. I was like, typically I thought it was a tailgating event for any stadium event, especially football. And I see the light blue is retail Revolution Park, and also no tailgating in that whole area. The tailgating's across the street in the green. So that answered my own question.
Bob?
I'm just interested in hearing from Stadium Advisor and from the chief.
Paul, do you have questions for Dan?
First game in March 29th
Yes.
and October 25th. And when do we anticipate the bulk of Patriot Place to open the retail?
Probably mid-August.
Okay. All right, so towards the end of the season.
Right.
Okay. All right.
The beginning of a new one.
Yes, right. Right.
There's still one work zone when the rest of the Lifestyle opens up. There's still the southernmost part of the Lifestyle Center, which is the hotel, and that won't be opening until probably first quarter '09.
Other questions for Dan?
Nope.
George,
Hi.
how are you?
Yes.
Welcome.
We reviewed it. I think, I'd say apprehension, we didn't have any apprehensions. We recommended for approval. Dan had mentioned that the only issue that we had in relation to the anticipated 40,000 people at the end of August. And Dan felt that he would come back to the board before then with parking plan. Is this the plan, Dan?
This is the plan, but we'll come back to certainly the chiefs. We will continue with our all-agency meetings and checklist meetings, work through the plans, but in preparation for the larger matches. And by the time the Becca match comes around, we'll have probably 2 football games with 65,000 people. So
And we would expect that by that time, when you come in with that application, you'll be what you're going to do with parking will be a little bit further advanced, and you'll have had the experience at least of one preseason game prior to this. So, good point, George.
and 2 concerts, or 1 or 2 concerts too.
1 or 2 concerts.
We had no other issues.
Thank you.
Recommended to the board for approval.
Chief McNamara.
I'd like to give you a letter. This will replace the one that you got earlier. I had left some comments out, so. We've ran into a little glitch. I've spoken with Dan Murphy on the issue. And it's about our frequency that we operate on. The frequency originated in 1994 with World Cup soccer.
The frequency that you operate on when you're,
At the
when you're
stadium.
staffing stadium events.
Yes,
Different than the frequency that you operate on when you're staffing the public safety building in Foxborough generally.
yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes. It's primarily used at the stadium and also a fire ground frequency should we have a major fire in town. And I can switch to that frequency for that incident. This frequency originated at World Cup Soccer in 1994 through the feds, and they gave it to the stadium for the fire department. At some point in time, the license lapsed and it wasn't renewed. Subsequently, we lost the frequency. We operated for a period of time, and I don't know how long that is. Can't cry over spilt milk now. We have to fix this. But we operated basically illegally, unbeknownst to us. And I found this out at the conclusion of the football season. So we took some steps to fix it. I've spoken to a gentleman by the name of Joe Sweeney, who is the frequency coordinator. What had happened, he asked us to switch to our main channel, Channel 1, because that channel we were on, that frequency was very close to the NFL's.
Which frequency was close to the NFL's? The one you were using and that became unlicensed?
Yes, that one is close. So we switched to our Channel 1 to comply to their wishes because it is too close to their operational frequencies for the football games. Whether it's the players or the refs, I'm not sure which, but it was too close and we could interfere with their game. So naturally we complied. But at the same time when this happens, we have the event going on at the stadium, and as luck would have it, we respond to an emergency, a house full of smoke, and we have to handle that with the same traffic that's at the stadium. It's just not doable.
Right, that's something that we haven't done for years, and it,
Right. And
Okay.
it didn't happen that often. It had happened before, and we worked with it, but after this incident, it was just tempting fate. So that prompted discussions, and I finally found out that this thing is unlicensed, and the ramifications are very negative, tremendous fines when we use an unlicensed frequency. So the best thing to do is get another frequency. What has to happen here is to get the frequency, there's a certain cost to license it, and we put the feelers out. One of our guys have found one, Dick Wright has found one, and he's brought it to the attention of Joe Sweeney. But there are other components as well.
who does Joe Sweeney work for?
Well, he's the NFL coordinator, but do you know him? I don't know exactly who he reports to be honest with you, if it's just the NFL or Mr. Kraft or
No.
whoever. I don't know.
Do you know how we originally obtained the frequency that became unlicensed?
Yes, it was the World Cup soccer in 1994.
How did it come
The
to
feds
us?
came in and, for security purposes, gave us another frequency. Gave the stadium a frequency which was turned over to us.
Was
when
that,
it was reported to me.
was it, do you know how that was paid for?
No, and I just thought, it became unlicensed. What good is it going to do to try to retrace how and why?
No, I'm just wondering
But,
for historical
it's a good
purposes.
point. I don't know. I can still try to research that for you.
No, maybe
but,
it's not necessary. Okay, go ahead.
And so when I found out it was unlicensed, we need to get another frequency and get things going again without any ramifications of huge fines, etc. So what this entails is getting the frequency, getting it licensed, and there's other components, repeaters, and these repeaters have to be narrowband capable.
Is that a piece of hardware?
Yes, it
Okay.
makes everything work. When you key the mic, you can talk to one another. There's cross banding that's needed so we can talk to the Fallon ambulance people with our portables. As well as some cable and antennas. And these other related components I mentioned along with some portable radios.
I mean, right, the soccer games don't draw that many people.
Yes.
Why are you bringing it tonight? Is it something that you're gonna have when we do have a larger crowd?
During the major events, and we've been able, I've talked to Chief O'Leary, for these less attended events, we can use a police channel 3 that they're not using, and it's only a Band-Aid approach, temporarily,
That's a short-term solution for the smaller.
yes.
uh,
And then when they get the next significant event, I suspect will be lacrosse. We really need to be.
Middle of June, the lacrosse championship?
End of May.
End of May, okay.
We should be online with our own frequency then. Got my fingers crossed we can make that work.
Have you investigated how long it will take us to obtain a new frequency and what the cost is? And have you talked to the stadium about absorbing the cost?
Yes.
Have you
Dan-
had a
Dan
chance
and
to
I had a
talk to you?
conversation
No, I
earlier.
heard about it at the Stadium Advisory meeting on the 11th of this month, and I have spoken with our PR department, who is the liaison with Joe Sweeney from the NFL, and we're looking. It might be as easy and as hard as having the NFL switch frequencies, and the chief operates as normal, but we'll absolutely address it.
Is it something that your organization is familiar with, the licensing of these particular frequencies?
I don't know, Jim. I'm not me. I'm not familiar with it.
Chief O'Leary?
Just from a historical perspective, during World Cup in 1994, the federal government, through the Department of Defense, provided additional equipment and/or radio frequencies to facilitate safety at all the different venues. And as probably a leftover, they left certain equipment and capabilities with public safety departments so that we could continue to operate using those one-time items for the World Cup. Mr. Sweeney is a coordinator on a statewide basis in terms of radio frequencies. In fact, when Foxboro got an additional police frequency back in the late 1980s for our tactical operations that Chief McNamara's staff will use as an interim, he was one of the people that identified the particular frequency for us. And I know in my conversation with Chief McNamara and Dick Wright that coordinates the police radio system, we're moving forward to support that effort to find a particular frequency for the fire service as their stadium fire ground frequency.
Does anybody, do you use the same frequency, police and fire?
No, we have separate ones.
Okay. Does anybody put a figure on this? For all this?
It's in the area of 30,000 for the repeaters,
And when
the
did this,
frequencies, the cross-banding technologies.
and when did this become knowledgeable to yourself?
Well, I started with near the end of the game season, football season, when I found out that this was not licensed,
Is it
and that it was not even available, that we couldn't get it relicensed. It is gone. We need to get another frequency. Joe Sweeney said he would do his best to help us out, and
Does it affect just the fire right now, or both the police and the fire? Just the fire?
just me.
Is your frequency stable?
Yes, it is, sir.
And Chief, you have the two frequencies, one that you can make available for the smaller events on a short-term basis.
Right, actually, we have 3 different frequencies, and we're making one of those tactical frequencies available for fire service.
Right, because you need multiple frequencies when you're staffing a major event, I understand that. So what I'm understanding, Chief, is that you're confident that we can go forward with the smaller crowds expected. The first major impact on this issue won't be until the lacrosse games,
Yes.
and you think that we can solve the problem in advance of the lacrosse games.
As long as it can be paid for. I think I would have to talk to the communications person who would put it in from Comtronics. He did all our communications work at the public safety building, so it stands to reason to make sure everything is, if there's no glitches, that we use the same person. same company.
Well, it seems to me that Dan's organization is willing to explore defraying the cost. It is a matter of public safety for stadium events. That's what one of the things we're talking about. Is that accurate, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to be smart about it. I'd like to approach it from all, maybe he uses the same frequency as, and you have the NFL get a new frequency. I don't know. I just want to have I want to
Sure.
explore it. As our last conversation at 5 o'clock, we were waiting on an estimate.
Yeah, I haven't, that's
Okay.
why I said nearly around 30,000.
George, did you want to weigh in on that? Or
I'm not sure.
Okay,
that,
so
I have any say.
it's, your position is, we're certainly willing to solve the problem. We want a chance to explore alternatives to keep the cost down if that's available. And that seems to make sense to me.
Yeah, it's not even the cost not to get the cost down, but to have the operation seamless.
Okay.
Well, I don't have a frequency right now, other than that Channel 3 of the police. That Channel 4, I can't operate. Our Channel 4, which is a
Right.
frequency that's not licensed, I can't operate that
And-
anymore.
And
So-
if we didn't have a stadium, then we would have to live with that. Given that the cost
Precisely.
of 30 to 50,000, or however much it is to have a second frequency, as much as we would like to have it, we would have to live without it. But given the number of events that we have up there, it's something that we need. The stadium benefits, and we benefit. Any other questions before we open it up to the public?
I just want, I'll have to call Danny.
Trying to understand the information. Chief, you're saying frequency, that Channel 4 is assigned to someone else?
That frequency, yes, that we have at the stadium is assigned to somebody else. We
We don't-
cannot get it,
We don't know who it's assigned to,
no. But we cannot, it's not available. That was looked into to see if we could, get through this, but unfortunately, we can't use it. It is not available.
Were you aware of all this?
just tonight now. This past, the chief called me today about it.
This is a public hearing. Anyone from the public wishing to be heard on the application to license the soccer games? Hearing none. Any,
Mr.
Bob?
Chairman, I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the schedule as submitted for 5 international matches in the Revolution slate for Craft Soccer LLC for the 2008 season.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just concerned that, the chief came before us with an issue tonight, and I don't know where we're going. I guess I'm kind of confused that, if we have an event at the end of May coming up in a soccer season, is there a time commitment with the stadium to look into this? I mean, is this gonna, obviously you need this frequency as soon as possible, even if it is a question of, like Mr. Murphy had said with the NFL or operation switching to a different frequency. It's still unlicensed, the one that you've been operating on, Chief, so I'm concerned that we bear some liability on that too if the chief knowingly goes and uses a frequency that's unlicensed. I assume, is it the FCC that doles out the frequencies?
I believe it is.
And the installation of antennas and repeaters and making sure that they have the cross-banding capabilities, I think could take some time. And I don't want to get into a situation where, we send the chief off to deal with the stadium on this and then we don't have an answer. Time goes by and there's more and more events, and as the chief said, I think we're tempting fate. So, I don't know if the commitment comes tonight or if we just agree that, in the next couple of weeks we address this, but something has to happen soon, I think.
It sounds to me like now that Andy's aware of it, Andy can work with the chief, and now that Dan's aware, it sounds like everybody's found out about it
Just
in the
now.
last 48 hours. And my understanding is that the tactical van for the police department is going to be at their disposal, so I don't think there's a compromising of public safety ability to communicate. I think it's just, we've got to fix, and I guess the assurance needs to be that chief will look into it sooner than later.
Well, the thing is, if this NFL changed all their frequencies, this problem doesn't go away, because I don't have.
We understand
I
that.
don't have
I
one,
think
so-
Paul just said the same thing.
Yeah.
So your plan of action now is to identify a frequency, to work with Mr. Sweeney, work with Mr. Murphy, and keep Andy updated, so that way, considering they're doing ongoing construction up there, now would be the opportunity. Because we talked about transponders and repeaters during our negotiations for the mitigation. And so, I don't know what, I think this does bear some looking into, but now would be the time as opposed to post-construction. So, I'm glad that you now are aware of it. We just, during the negotiation meetings we had regarding transponders and repeaters, it sounds very similar to what we're talking about here as far as being able to communicate within the stadium proper.
Dan, when did you become aware of this?
This month at the Stadium Advisory Meeting on the 11th of this month.
It's not fixed yet?
I wish,
Well, if I may, when I realized the frequency was not licensed, and Joe Sweeney
You didn't just...
offered to look into the frequency issue. At that point, I wasn't aware either of how much more was needed, the repeating system and stuff of that nature. My ignorance prevailed. I thought, well, okay, a frequency and that'll be it. Unfortunately, I would have brought this to the attention of the board sooner.
Sure, of course you would, Chief. This is the way I see this particular application. This is for soccer games. There's one game on the end that should draw a crowd that implicates the all-agency meeting and the standard form stadium security necessary. Prior to that time, we will have had as many as 5, if not more, major events for which this problem has to be solved. So I don't see the lack of a frequency as impeding our ability to pass on this license tonight, or to make this license contingent on coming up with that frequency. I will say, and it's been represented, we understand there's a problem. We've already licensed the lacrosse event, correct?
no.
We haven't, so you're going to come in with an application on lacrosse? I thought we had already licensed it.
Collegiate events don't require
It
application.
goes through this process.
It doesn't.
I'm glad to come in to talk about it.
Well,
When was you
it's an education and process up
Mr. Chairman,
here for me.
it was just brought to my attention. If I've ever shown you that we're not willing to
No,
work
Dan,
to get this right,
no, you haven't.
then I would ask you to let us work it out,
Yep.
and we'll get it. I don't think there's any.
Yeah, I don't see
okay.
it as an issue here, and we're going to look for the lacrosse event. If it doesn't have to be licensed, we would assume that by then you'll have solved the problem. Like Bob says, work with Andy. So I wouldn't amend the motion. I would license these events. So, did you make a motion?
Yes.
The motion was seconded, and we're discussing it.
Yes.
Gee whiz, I'm getting old.
Good.
Now I'm going to hear from the seniors. I didn't mean it that way, George.
Or if I may ask, I would
Yeah.
just say that we have an event that we've received an application on that will be before you on the 22nd of April. And we'll be holding a hearing on, or we'll be holding a meeting on the Bruce Springsteen concert, which is a significant event.
Sure.
And at that point, we will query the stadium and
Yeah.
have something back for you by the 22nd.
Right in line with what I was saying. It really doesn't impact this particular license at this time. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief O'Leary.
Not on the subject of the soccer license itself, but I guess I don't understand why the stadium has to be so involved or held accountable for this. I would think that the town manager and the chief would be able to, discover a way to fix the problem. Whether it's, maybe even national security or whatever may be involved somehow with frequencies, wouldn't they?
It's a good point with national security and the funding that we're getting all the time. I think it's a work in progress. I think you bring up a good point, Linda.
I just, I don't,
But there are, I have full faith that Dan Murphy and his people and the chief, and I think Chief O'Leary would probably be very much involved with this also to get this all
I
up
do,
and running.
that was
I think
just,
it's a good-
You want to make sure that the burden of responsibility remains on the town.
well, yeah, because it's,
It's a town issue.
It is a town issue, and
And I think as Jim
it's
points
my
out,
town that's, safety is at risk, that's,
Oh, I think it's a good point, but I also think that, as a working partnership with the stadium, that we'll all work through this, and I think everything will be fine. I'll follow up with Dan in a couple of days and see how it's working out. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, George. Thank you, Chief.
Oh, thank you.
Your kids were great, Deanne,
They
very
were.
nice, very well behaved.
We'll move on to an appointment, 7:45, with the Cable TV Advisory Committee.
I know.
My kids would be climbing the wall.
Your kids would be This is gonna be a advisory committee.
Good evening. I'm okay.
Hey, man, your voice sounds better than the last time we met.
How's everybody?
I heard you say you're getting old, and that made me shudder, so I don't want
I am.
to catch up to me.
Let's just run through the names
All right,
for the record.
Linfeld, Matt
Matt Shea.
Shea.
Matt,
Mike Weber,
Mike.
Paul Beck.
welcome.
Now, he is the clerk of our committee. I'm chairman. He is executive director of Cable Access. And he's the president, but he's also the IT guru. I'll try and make this as simple and quick. You've got all the documents in front of you, and I'm sure you had a lot of bedtime reading opportunities with it.
I just want to check our frequency first.
Yeah, I was sitting back there listening to this frequency and oh, God, don't go there. I probably, I sent Andy and Bob what I wanted to cover tonight, but I think I'm going to reverse the order in a sense. I would like the Board of Selectmen to consider redefining or specifically defining this committee as an ongoing committee. The understanding to this point has been that every time there's a license renewal, we get a cable television advisory committee together and they do the process. I was actually 32 years ago when I started this process, and it's been very aging. A lot of on-the-job training, and I just think that it's too important and too complicated to do it that way, and I would like it to be an ongoing committee from the perspective of just keeping in touch with. There's so many changes technologically in the industry that are happening that will impact the town, and that's one reason. Another reason is that as a watchdog on compliance issues relative to the licenses we grant, you people, good Lord, have enough on your table without dealing with that. And for the committee to be able to periodically review some of the situations that are happening, service problems or whatever, to ensure that our cable television suppliers are living up to the license. And then thirdly, to have a place, I guess, for the body politic to come to and voice their concerns or issues without having to come directly to you. So I would like the board to formally make this an ongoing committee and so forth. And I can say from, I was surprisingly made chairman a year and a half or so ago, and it's been on-the-job training and very challenging, and I wouldn't want that to happen to someone else again.
I've been, as this board's liaison with the committee, I've been very impressed with the body of knowledge that's been gained and the amount of work and the level of, high level of thorough research and exploring all the rocks that's gone into this. And, I've encouraged this type of committee to think along that lines. Obviously, I think that we could find another group of volunteers that would have this level of knowledge again. Plus, it's our job to have oversight of the contract. In the last 10 years, I think the last time we had any substantial review was during the 2002 campaign fact when current provider Comcast took over. And in those last 6 years, as I sit on the board of Cable Access, we get a monthly report from the director regarding issues, but for me to bring it to this board, it's not exactly an agenda item, so I think this is an excellent way for folks in the community to have a conduit for their issues to us through them, and they can do the research on our behalf, apply some resolutions, and also advocate for the general consumer who might have an issue, much better than we in this board can, in that we do have a lot on our plate. So I'm very supportive of appointing this as a permanent committee.
I take that as a motion, Bob, or discussion?
Discussion. I would make a motion then that we permanently appoint a standing Cable Television Advisory Committee.
I'll second the motion, and offer it up for discussion.
I thought we had one. I thought that was what.
It disbands.
What is what's the main group that runs cable access?
Well, that's Foxboro Cable Access, which
Okay.
is,
It's a corporation that is a 501c3. It is not a governing body. It's an entity to foster the use of the television facilities from an artistic, creative, civic aspect, not a legal grab them by the throat and wrestle with them issue. That's what
Okay.
what Lynn is addressing, is that there needs to be an advisory committee to you, the board, that is not tied with the facility that produces the programs.
let me jump in on that for clarification. Peter Epstein, our lawyer, and he was the lawyer, fortunately, for the last time around 10 years ago, knowledgeable in these, has made a huge point, as I have in the time that I've chaired the committee, to clarify the difference between the committee represents the town. Foxboro Cable Access is part of the, what we call the PEG, the Public Educational and Government requirements under federal law that cable television providers must honor. So Foxboro Cable Access is one element of that, but there are the other elements which involve education, government, etc. So our committee has tried to very carefully represent the town as a whole. These gentlemen represent the cable access or the public access element.
Which is a corporation.
Which is the corporation. So that's kind of a difference, and that's, does that help clarify?
Well, it's interesting. I understand now that there's a corporation.
Yeah.
Now, is that the corporation that you're the president of, Paul?
Yes, it is.
And
It's-
are all of you connected to that corporation? No.
No.
Point of information, the
Matt?
committee's set up with 7 voting members, none of whom sit on the FCA board.
The committee being, the committee that you're representing
Correct.
tonight?
The committee is a subcommittee of our board.
Right.
Fox-
Cable Television
Foxborough
Advisory
Cable
Committee
Access-
is advisory to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Foxborough Cable Access is completely
There-
separate.
There are 6 ex officio members, some of whom sit on the FCA board, but they are non-voting in the
All right. So there's a 7-member advisory committee
Correct.
that currently exists.
Right.
Yes.
And has existed, but it automatically disbands and disappears like the pumpkin.
Once the
and
license has
Once the
been-
license is granted, that commission dissolves.
All right, and that's
what
the
Lynn is suggesting is that not dissolve.
okay.
Just make it like some other committees, an annual reappointment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the distinction between the two is very important from a Foxborough Cable Access
Between
standpoint.
the two what, Mike? The Inc. and the committee?
Between the nonprofit
Yeah,
organization and the...
I understand. And anybody else not understand that?
I absolutely understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But
Good.
just to, as a point of clarification, the distinction is important. In the last 10-year contract that is now up and is expiring, it's difficult for the Foxborough Cable Access Organization to go to Comcast and say, you're not complying here, you're not complying here. We have to have a certain type of relationship with Comcast on an ongoing basis because there's this constant communication and we try to develop this relationship of working together. But if we were the watchdog group or the compliance police, so to speak, that creates a different type of relationship, and I think it would strain the relationship if FCA were asked to do that function. The Cable Television Advisory Committee is really handling the contractual aspects of it, and we are sort of a subcontractor handling the 3 PEG channels and fostering the volunteers in town.
And what do you do, Bob?
Lord only knows. Let's
keeps
see.
us.
With this hat, as we know, I'm the one of the two members of the board of directors of Foxboro Cable Access that
Inc.
this
Right.
board
Okay.
appoints, and so I'm proud to serve in that capacity. What typically will happen if there's a leaky roof or if there's a cable that's crossed or something that Mike needs to address with Comcast, he'll do it directly. He has to use it gently because there's politics involved, not at our level. If there's an ongoing issue, an exit sign that can't be fixed or a leak that's dripping on his ficus or whatever, then what I'll try to do is either bring it to this board or I'll try to come to town hall and prod whatever group is whatever town official is helpful to get the solution. It's fine, but it's frustrating for Michael. He's got so much to do out there at the cable access with the volunteers, with program development, with programming, with equipment that's breaking, and with a building that's breaking, that he sometimes gets frustrated. And what we've lacked on this board is really somebody who's been there to pay attention. I think what Lynn is offering.
Lacked on the Board of Directors of Foxboro Cable Access Inc.
No.
or the Board of Selectmen?
Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen is responsible for enforcement of the contract. Cable Access doesn't have anything to do with enforcement of the contract. They're the recipients of the financial return and whatever else is involved with the contract that allows Cable Access to produce programming, exist, and air 3 channels. But they don't have anything to do with the oversight. They're the recipient. So they don't have anything to do with our job, which is oversight and enforcement. I think what Lynn is suggesting is not only would it benefit us without having to call a new set of volunteers 8 years from now when we begin the licensing process again, we'll be able to have that institutional knowledge already in place, but also it'll allow the board, Cable Access, myself included, to have a voice and be able to say, hey, this is a problem with the contract, we don't see this happening, can you assist us? And then Lynn's group will be able to do the research, the advocacy, and hopefully seek a resolution.
And seek compliance.
On our behalf, and elevate it to us if necessary, or be able to sort through the truth and find out that maybe Michael cut a hole in the roof and it's not Comcast's responsibility to fix it. These are the things that we have a lot to do, and I think it's a great offer.
Well, I think, just to see if I can cut to the chase, federal law and state law allows, at least in the Commonwealth, individual towns to be licensing the franchises to cable television providers. You, the board, are the licensing authority. You do get some of the revenues, the gross profit revenues of the cable television provider goes directly to the town, per subscriber fee, and some of it goes to Cable Access, which is the public access. Remember, there's PEG, Public, Educational, and Government. So, in truth, the process is you are the licensing authority, and this is just an appendage. Excuse me, guys, but the Cable Access is part of it, a big part of it, but part of it. Okay, and so it's important, and it's in our process has always been to protect that separateness, that our committee represents the town as advisors to you, and they will function and continue to function under that umbrella. My concern is, as I look down, and I'm kind of a visionary, and I'm not a detail man, thank God I have these guys. The big picture is we know technology is changing rapidly, very rapidly. The laws, federally and state-wise, are changing rapidly, and it will affect everybody in the town. And that's what this advisory committee should be doing on an ongoing basis, is to advise you if there's anything that comes up that you as a licensing authority need to know. So that's all I ask, is a continuation. It's been a pretty tough road for me for the last couple of years.
Now, what does that discussion have to do with the documentation? It was the committee that negotiated this, not the corporation.
That is correct.
On behalf of the town.
That's correct.
Oh, well, that's a good thing to understand. Now, in terms of the committee, we have a committee that will disband when the if we agree to the contract, and the recommendation is that we make that committee. So that's not something we have to do tonight. We can take that up at the next meeting or a
Right.
meeting after that. So, now that I understand, now, who's on the committee? There's 7 people on the committee.
Actually, now we have 6?
We have 6, we have 1 vacancy.
Yeah.
I
And-
don't know if this list is up to date. Harold Donnelly,
Harold Donnelly.
Lynn Feld,
Yep.
Gary Nash,
Yep.
Matthew Shea,
Yeah.
Richard Plasmati, John Reagan,
Yeah.
and a vacancy.
And a vacancy.
And that group participated in the negotiation of
Correct.
this.
Correct.
Okay. Now, one of the things that we heard about on a regular basis, because there's a lot of pages, and it's
Yes.
very technical,
Yeah.
tedious. We must have relied upon Attorney Epstein
Yes.
to represent our interest. We're being evicted from the location that you have
Yeah.
been, not you, you have been operating from
Exactly.
for a long time.
We've also participated in some of the language in this to define certain things.
Okay, so the committee-
The FCA has been handed,
Their ex officio members of the committee are non-voting
All right.
members.
That makes sense.
participate in that.
You told the committee what you needed in order, what arrangements has this particular licensee made to house you?
Right.
What's going to happen?
Okay. So where we are at this point then, what I'd like to do is the simplest document.
Jim, do you want me to interrupt? We had a motion on the table.
I think the request was made to table it until the next.
Well, we haven't voted on the motion.
That's what I'm saying, we haven't voted on the motion or the second.
I would have forgotten there was a motion.
I make a motion, we table the motion until the next meeting of the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
All right, there's a motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you, Mark, for that procedural.
And I thank you, gentlemen, for rescheduling us, because 2 weeks ago, we had too many technical things involving the licensing, et cetera, that, well, now, what I want to say to you is, as Peter Epstein has said to me, don't get too hung up on the RFP or the proposed license, which is 76 or 77 pages, because those are beginning documents. That's what we're putting on the table. Okay. Lord knows what they're going to come back with. Well, I have a pretty good idea. And what will evolve ultimately. So to get hung up on them and get too immersed in it is not going to be productive.
It's almost like it's premature.
Yeah, it's premature. In other words, this is the first round.
You're not looking for signatures.
Well-
You're reporting status?
No.
I think they,
Andy?
if I may make a comment.
Yes, you can.
You need to approve the ascertainment report.
And the RFP, and you need to approve these. What I want to say is you need tonight to approve these documents so that they are sent. I was going to go through this process, so it's okay.
But
No,
no, thank
you. The process is that the ascertainment report is what I'm going to focus on a little bit tonight, because it explains out of that came the RFP, and out of that came the renewal license. Okay, those documents, the latter two, the RFP and Andy and I have conversed. I've tried to communicate. Those documents, RFP and the renewal license, need to be sent with a cover letter to Comcast tomorrow or as soon as possible,
So,
after you as a board approve them,
RFP and
and
the
the renewal license.
renewal license.
What that says is this: the ascertainment process or phase of the whole renewal deal closes tonight. And we now say to Comcast, who is at this moment our only provider, here, we need a proposal back from you. Here's what we're looking for, i.e. the RFP, and here is the license that we propose. That's our opening shot or sally or whatever you want to say that we put on the table. They will have, and we are giving them, and I noted to Andy, we're giving them until May 15th to respond. Legally, they have a month, but Peter tells me that they've been asking for an extension because they're flooded with work or whatever right now, these things. So if we get these to them this week, they have until May 15th to come back to us with their proposal and their version of the license. In the interim, they may request a copy of the ascertainment report and likely will ask for a copy of the survey we conducted of the users, which is fine. They can have this. After May 15th, we then have, as a town, 4 months by law to negotiate the ultimate contract. Our current contract ends November 30th. We right now then would still have 2.5 months. Okay. But all things are negotiable. And I can assure you that this process, this negotiation is going to be difficult. I didn't realize that Jerry Buckley was going to be the people with whom we're going to negotiate, but I had lunch with him last November, and I'm glad he paid for the lunch, because it's going to be a challenge. Now, on the negotiating team, you people will not be, the board will not be directly involved, and there's good reasons for that. Intelligent negotiation says you don't have the final authorities at the table, so that you can always say, well, we'll have to check with, that's a good point, let's go check with them. You need to be above the fray of that. We will obviously keep you well advised. Okay. Peter Epstein will be the chief negotiator. He did the last one, he'll do this one, and he's well known in the business. I will be on the team. John Regan will be on the team, one of our committee members, and Harold Donnelly, thank you, senior moment, will be on the team. Harold particularly, because he went to lunch with me with Jerry, and Harold and Jerry, it turns out, grew up in the same area of Boston, and it just sort of greased the skids a little bit and kept things in a calmer, whatever, basis. So that's the process that goes forward. Do you understand that? Is that?
I'm following you.
Okay.
I have a quick question, however.
Yes.
It appears to me as though there's no danger of our not needing this committee. So it looks to me like the committee is going to, the work is going to go on.
Well, through the, see, what historically apparently has happened is through the negotiation process, but then when the negotiation ends, the agreement's made, et cetera, the
Right,
committee has
that's
disbanded.
We're looking like months down the road on that.
End of the year.
Okay, all right. So
Yeah.
even though we've tabled it to next meeting, we don't even have to act
No,
on
no,
it then.
yeah, it's not a rush, but right, I'm planting the seed, I'm sorry.
All right, so you have, using the advice of Attorney Epstein, prepared an ascertainment report that is part of the process in relicensing a cable provider.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Some of the things, some of the input, if you look at the ascertainment report, we were required by law, for example, to have a public hearing. Actually, we did one better than that. We called together community leaders to advise them of the process and their role in it, to try and gear up more public involvement and interest. This is your opportunity. What do you like? What don't you like? What would you like changed? Yada, yada. That was the first hearing. That, I think, was in April. So we wanted the community leaders to go back to their groups and say, hey, this is important. Don't blow it off. You need to do this. Then in May, I think it was the 29th, we had a public hearing where people could come and voice their concerns. Comcast was there. Jerry Buckley was there from Comcast. He is, I believe, his title is Director of Community Relations. Huh?
Community and Government Relations.
Right. And they had a transcriber that they copied the whole thing. We also then conducted the survey, which I gave you a copy of. And actually, this survey this time, we did both online and hard copy. And I was very pleased. Matt and his crew did an excellent job, worked their fanny off. And we got just under 500 respondents, which some people may say that's not a lot, but hey, that was pretty good. It was like 3 times better than the time around before. Taking all that information then, and concerns and issues, is what came into the ascertainment report. And if you look at it, one of the top things is customer service provisions. People wanted to retain the office that Comcast has here. And any other, by the way, as an underlying statement, Whatever we decide with Comcast will be the threshold that needs to be met by Verizon or anyone else. So one of the things that the people said, we wanted a local office to be able to go to, pay our bills, complain, whatever. We also had issues with customer service standards in terms of not only compliance, but in terms of definitions. Their definitions, Comcast definitions of compliance are different. So that's one of the things that we're going to work on in negotiation. Let's get a standard set of definitions that we can agree to. The second big issue was public education and the PEG access and availability,
Which is us.
which is in large measure cable access. And we go through that in the ascertainment report in terms of funding, et cetera. Probably the big concern that we have this time is that Comcast has told me that historically they never give more than 4.5%, and they don't do any capital funding. And we're saying, well, wait a minute, you've just evicted cable access from your turf. And Jerry's response was, well, yeah, so instead of 4.5%, we could cut that down to 4.25%. And I looked at him and said, I don't understand your math. I want to go the other way, because now they're going to have rent and all this other stuff. So that's one of the big issues that's going to come up is capital funding. They kind of refuse to do that. They have not historically done it. Access channels for cable access is important with high definition coming on, with the digital transmission occurring in February, is it, of
February 9th.
Next year. They need to have stability. People need to be able to say, okay, we can go to channel 8, we can go to channel 12, channel 22, and not be bounced around. Okay. So that's going to be an issue. Origination locations. This location, this facility here, actually we came up with 18 that we want them to plug into. The INET, as it's called, or institutional network that connects all the public buildings, the schools, etc. We have a 360 megahertz.
350 megahertz.
Yeah, that's ancient.
It's 22 years old.
They have not upgraded it. That's another compliance issue, another reason we want the committee to go on. And that's going to be a negotiating item, a big one. Either they bring it up to snuff or they do something, but it can't stay the way it is. And then the final issue there is senior discount, a meaningful discount. You know, so far there's been a minimal discount off of the basic rate, but if you happen to get tier 2 or tier 3, I mean, you're talking cents instead of dollars. And the application for the senior discount was kind of humiliating to people, and it's like, I can go into Kohl's and buy something and just show my driver's license that, yes, I am 65 or better, and boom. Well, why isn't it that simple with them? I understand that their business is getting much more fragmented and much more challenged, and their profits are tighter. So they're going to be looking very closely at protecting. I understand that, and I appreciate that. By the same token, we need to keep our systems working and our access going. We don't want to lose that. So the ascertainment report, your sign-off page, is page 4 of that. And then, Andy, after you approve of the RFP and the license as well as the ascertainment report, Andy will send a copy on to Comcast. Are there any questions?
Just to recap, we're actually now, I'm looking at the ascertainment report. The issuing authority is this board.
That's correct.
What you're asking this board is to make findings, and in order to make those findings, we're relying upon the information that your committee has developed through the town
That's
manager.
correct.
that you're finding that Comcast should continue to operate the customer service in Foxborough.
Customer's office.
Yeah, that 96% of the respondents say, yes, we want a local. You're asking us to find that there have been problems with customer service, and that a large percentage respond negatively to customer service, and that be made part of the negotiations. We're talking about the funding. The increase is going to go from 4.5% to 5% of what Comcast brings in, and in your budgeting, that's going to be sufficient to cover the needs of Foxborough
That's
cable
the legal
access.
max.
That's
That's
the,
the-
all
yeah,
right,
it's
so
the
we
legal
gotta-
max, and
we
that's-
got to come in with that,
Right.
right?
We know it won't cover all.
And that's why we
Okay.
ask for capital funding.
You're also you're addressing the issue that I brought up about the move. You're saying that we've got to move. You're also saying that we want to stay there at least through 2009.
Oh, that's a good point,
While we
yes.
find a new home, which I know that the Chestnut Green developer has already promised us. So maybe there's a coordination here, and the high school has talked about it. The request for funding now, the 706,000. What does that mean, Lynn? B, page 2.
Yeah, that's the best guesstimate of the expenditures involving locating a new studio, moving it, equipping it.
It actually encompasses
Just the equipment. It's really just the equipment, not moving any expenses. It's not building a building.
Oh, no, it's not building a building.
So
Right.
that's not your operating costs, your equipment. This is a transition number.
Correct.
part of what we have to submit is what we anticipate our capital expenses are going to be for the next 10 years. So in addition to the move, it's replacing equipment that ages. The U.S. standard is now going to be high def. Even if, that's not needed for cable access, there's not going to be any other equipment to purchase other than high def. So it includes all those expenses.
For purposes of making the findings, though, Mike, where is that $706,000 coming from?
It's an attachment, I believe.
It's
From what source?
It's in the RFP.
Our budgets are attached to.
Who's going to pay that?
in other words, no,
Provider?
no. That's part of what we're negotiating with Comcast.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Right.
We talk about the transition period. We talk about the 3 channels that you talked about that they're going to be provided without charge. There's some broadcast, I guess there's some, I don't know.
Origination location.
Origination locations are going to remain the same. or
And somewhat
expand.
expanded. For example, we have the new public safety building. We don't know what's going to happen with their location for PEG access.
Now that I'm understanding better, we don't understand, what is the institutional network? If you told us, if you could tell us again?
That's a requirement by law. It connects all of the public
Yep.
buildings.
Right, and that's in
Schools.
place now, correct?
That's what allows us to
Yeah.
send
And
out
that
signals
was one
like
of the
this.
issues when you opened
Right.
the new building, chief, is the ability to communicate.
Right, and actually what the problem there is, again, been compliance. They have not maintained it.
Let me just define very quickly. You can understand that the residential cable loop leaves the cable head end and goes outward, so it's a one-way distribution out. The iNet is a parallel thing on a much smaller thing. It's a duplicate cable system, but it's for inserting signals like from this room here. That control room that's in the corner there is feeding a signal into the iNet. It finds its way back through a smaller, less widely distributed signal cable system back to the head end. There are, I think, 9 locations now where that system is in play. It is abysmally dysfunctional, and we are seeking redress in this situation here, that they will either replace it, upgrade it, or take whatever steps they need so that it is functional. The telecast of this very selectmen's meeting has been compromised numerable times because the system is so old and fails without warning.
And again, you have covered that, Paul, in the
In the RFP.
in the ascertainment report, which is all I'm looking at right now.
It goes into far more detail in the
Comcast
RFP.
needs to better maintain the iNet.
Right.
So, and then you're also including a senior discount is something that we want.
Right.
And that's what you're asking us to approve. Then
So-
you have attachments that buttress
Yes.
what
Well,
you're asking us to find.
What we're saying is the ascertainment report completes the input from the public.
Okay.
And from that, all of that now will appear in much more detail and depth in the request for a proposal from them. The more, you get into the technical specifics, etc. And then even more detail into the license, which is 70-some pages, which frankly I did not totally read either. But again, those are the opening forays. So that's the process. We ascertain from the public areas of focus and need, transfer that into a request for this is what we need, an RFP from you guys. And here's what we think the license will look like. And they're going to come back by May 15th, if you approve this opening foray, and say, well, this is what we'll offer, and this is what we think it'll look like.
Okay, I have a much better understanding now. Just a spot check, for example, in the RFP on page 11, you addressed the customer service issue, whether somebody's going to be there to answer the telephone, then you go on to the institutional network. So it's an expansion of the earlier document.
In very carefully chosen detail.
Which is why you said they probably don't need to see this, but we have no reason not to show it to them.
Oh, yeah.
These are the two documents that you're asking us to approve and
The
sign tonight.
RFP and the license, correct. And, well, actually, the ascertainment as well. All three.
All three.
The ascertainment report is the carrier for the other two.
Okay, let me ask you then about the renewal license. That's the bulkiest.
Yeah, that's the 76-pager or
Okay, what's that?
77-pager.
I understand these two. Anybody have any questions on the first two documents? What's the license?
The license is the actual formal license in legalese as to what they need to abide by. So it sort of, I guess, if I were to follow the process, whereas the ascertainment report was simple, direct, several pages, then you get the RFP, gets more complex. The license gets very technical and legalistic in terms of requirements and language. And that's the ultimate document that will prevail for whatever period of time that we agree on. Now, 10 years has been the norm to date, but that is not, that too is negotiable.
It is the end game, that document there in some form, and what Linda's suggesting is that there's a lot of things in there that we're very confident Comcast will recoil and reject, and that's where the negotiation issue comes into play. But the document you see, we're as a strategic, if not tactical plan, have taken the time and effort to create what we think will be a favorable end document or end game document for the town and for the PEG facility. We know that that's going to be shot at with a blunderbuss.
And that you have relied upon Attorney Epstein to advise
Correct.
you as to how that document should be structured.
Correct.
It is a template that it is very legalese, but it also makes sense considering what it is we're asking them to do.
We spent untold communiques with Peter on this and phone conversations to ensure, and that's why we had to delay appearance to you, and I appreciate your acceptance, is to get the final nuts and bolts.
Did you participate in this process, Andy? Well,
No, I did, but just to the board, as I'm familiar with Mr. Epstein's work, I've known him for a number of years. I've attended some seminars he put on at municipal meetings in Boston. This is his field. That's all he does. He just prepare these documents and negotiate, help us negotiate license renewals.
Now, I guess my last question, I have two questions left.
Okay.
Why are we signing a license?
You're signing, no, you're approving. In other words, what we're asking you to do is, I guess you do sign this ascertainment report because that's the public input.
Yep.
Then we're asking you to approve the RFP.
Right.
And approve the renewal license.
The draft.
Which are in other words, these are the things now we're going to send on you guys as the licensing authority for the town. And God help us, we want Verizon in and some other people. We're going to go through this again with them.
Okay, that's my next question. What about competition?
That's fine. It's great.
Does this process go to more than Comcast?
No, right now this is directly for Comcast. But as I said earlier, Jim, this sets the threshold. We cannot get less or demand less or more from anybody else. It's a level playing field. So this is kind of what the statement will be to, now, I have heard, for example, when Verizon wants to get into a community, they will offer more than the minimum that exists with the existing provider. Okay, that's fine. But in fairness to them and in fairness to us as a town, this has to be a level playing field. So this contract sets the stage for future negotiations.
This is strictly, Comcast applied for a renewal, and this is strictly a renewal process. So if there was a competitor, that would be a separate application and a separate
Yeah.
process.
Are there competitors?
Well, as Verizon would probably like to come in, and we'd like to have them come in, frankly, at some point, and then we'd have to do this similar thing with them, except that a lot of the legwork has already been accomplished. These documents, like I say, represent the basis, the foundation for anybody else. So if somebody else comes along, they're going to have to abide by what's in this contract. Okay. If they want to do other things, that's fine.
I believe 10 years ago, RCN was approached or came to the table, and I don't think it happened. What obviously didn't happen in other towns, RCN is a second cable provider, but they, in some communities, had, for financial reasons, have had to withdraw. They're not really a competitor in this area at the moment.
Some towns have all three, and very simply, this becomes the template for the negotiations with Verizon. If they were to come, fill out the form, and knock on our door officially and say, we'd like to put up a cable system.
Well, you know, and I'd like to insert here, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time on the Verizon issue because that's a separate issue.
I don't either. I just
No,
want to
no,
move
but I
through
think
these
but it
and
needs
get
to
all
be
the
on the
work to do.
table. It needs to be on the table. When I had lunch with Jerry Buckley from Comcast, both he and I agreed. He said, "Hey, great, have him come in," and I said, "Fine."
There's another, the FiOS issue was in the information package. Hopefully we'll talk about that during the business portion. It just, in terms of what we're doing here, we're really approving what you've done, signing what you've done, authorized the committee to send paperwork to Comcast.
No, you send it.
Yeah, all right, the town to send paperwork to Comcast and have Comcast answer whether or not they want to provide a system consistent with the RFP.
Right. They're going to come back by May 15th with their answer, which is going to be fun.
It would have taken me longer to read all those papers.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry that it took you so long, but we had to go through that.
No, I was fine. Anybody have any questions? Paul?
Lynn, you had mentioned that legally they have 30 days, but we're going to give them till May 15th.
Yeah, you know, we kind of pushed on it, and this is the 25th, and we could say, okay, April 25th, but Peter tells me that, you know, they have consistently, and that's not a big issue. We have time. I just assume it's another one of those things as your opening foray when you sit and do business with someone. Okay, I'm not going to hold you to 30 days. Okay, they'll give you a little extra time. And again, everything's negotiable. Does that respond?
Yeah.
But you're actually looking for a signature tonight
On the ascertainment report and then approval of all three.
The ascertainment report, however, is a final document. It's not a draft.
Correct.
That's correct.
All it is
That is
it's
correct.
basically the cover letter that transmits the other two.
Well, it basically closes. There are
Yeah, I
two.
have one that's not marked.
Not marked, right.
There are two phases of the whole process: ascertainment and negotiation. What does the community need, and then what's the end product? So, when you sign the ascertainment report, you're really saying to Comcast and to everybody, this phase is done. Now we're going into negotiations.
And if we vote to sign the ascertainment report, does that cover the other documents that are in front
No,
of us?
you need to approve those
So
two
we're
as
voting
well.
to sign the ascertainment report and to accept the draft RFP and the draft renewal license.
Approving those forms.
Approving the forms. They're not drafts,
So
actually.
we're
but-
approving 3 forms.
Signing one and approving the other two.
Yes.
So I'll start off with the first. I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approves and issues the ascertainment report as of March 25th, 2008.
Second, further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approve as submitted the renewal proposal entitled Request for Cable Television Renewal Proposal dated March 25th, 2008.
Second, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approve document dated March 25th, 2008, entitled Granted to Comcast Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Ohio Incorporated, Cable Television Renewal License.
Second, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Okay.
Thank you, and I would say, just in closing, I appreciate your cooperation. Bob has been instrumental and spent hours with me. Andy has likewise. And in deference to my colleague of the press, Michael Galwasser, wanted a copy of the ascertainment report prior, and I wouldn't offer that because it is a document for you to do with. So he wanted to be able to have some, and I didn't mean to be so terse with him, but I said, no, it's a matter of confidence, and it's your equipment.
Well, he's still here. He hasn't left yet, so.
No, but he's done a good job with that, but I hope he appreciates the process, and I thank you all. And we will keep you apprised of what goes on with this.
Thank you.
I would just like the board to recognize that Lynn in particular, but the entire committee has worked tirelessly on our behalf to not only create the documents we have, but also to really dig to the meat of the matter. And Lynn has taken much time out of his life to educate me, as well as really cut through the nuts and bring forward some quality work that we can hang our hat on. So a lot of credit to you folks.
You had to put a head of hair back in May.
And on behalf of the corporation, on behalf of Foxboro Cable Access, as their president and chairman, let me thank you all as the licensing authority for being supportive to us. And I would like to thank Lynn as well and the committee.
Paul, how long have you been with Foxboro Cable Access?
Since the 1830s.
Since
the beginning.
What was that?
It was 1985.
Well, you've been doing your work a heck of a lot longer than I've been doing mine. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am
Mike, you
appreciative
too.
of my
Thank you.
colleagues.
Matt,
Thank you all.
for coming. Thanks for your work.
Thanks.
And thanks for the water. I needed that.
We have a continued public hearing with Chief O'Leary.
It's the small kindnesses of life that make the world worth living.
Oh, that's okay.
I think the chief sits there and solves problems and doesn't tell anybody. Thank you for coming back, Chief. We tabled this from the last meeting to give you an opportunity, or to give the community an opportunity to weigh in with you, I think. Is that the reason we put this over?
That is correct.
And what?
Actually, I did hear from a member of the community. Walter is here.
Mr. Groves?
He's had contacted me because I had sent out, after our last meeting, to all the liquor license holders, including the package stores as well as the over-the-counter, the amendments that were discussed at the last meeting. And I did this one on yellow just to try and separate the white from everything, so that and the only change that was made after some feedback, I'm going to find my glasses, was within the at the second sentence, from the bottom of the first paragraph, within those areas of the licensee's premises where alcohol is served. Last weekend, the board, at our last meeting, licensed the theater, and I'm aiming this at places where alcohol is served, not necessarily the entire structure, because we have auditoriums there that would hold several hundred people, but there's no alcohol service. So that's an adjustment
Thank you.
to that.
That's very reasonable.
And the last thing, and it will cover this particular proposal, which is 14A, but at some future date when we look at these next year, it might be a separate number of its own. And that is, at the very bottom, nothing in these liquor regulations shall supersede conditions imposed by the Board of Selectmen as part of the conditions for a liquor license. Again, at the last meeting, we established some particular conditions to the licensing of the sale of liquor at the theater. And I anticipate the board might be doing that as we see the build-out of the Patriot Place structures, that you might have conditions, and your conditions may have precedence over a particular regulation. And I'm just throwing that out. Certainly, it's up to the board to.
I don't want to interrupt you. Are you all set?
Yes, I am, sir.
The appeal process that you drafted, Chief, should the chief assign a police detail, the licensee may appear before the board to review and establish appropriate public safety measures for such events. Do you interpret that to mean this board would have authority to say, Chief, I don't think you need 3 on that detail?
Well,
What is your understanding of that?
my understanding is I would assign the detail there, and then the board could have a discussion with the licensee about the need for it. So
But-
that you would have that opportunity, which I can't declare martial law.
In the unlikely event that we disagreed with your professional opinion that you needed 3 or 4, is that designed for the Board of Selectmen to say, Chief, you're not going to have 3 or 4, you can have 2?
Well, I think you have to give people an opportunity to appeal to someone, so it isn't arbitrary and capricious.
Well, I would think that the inclusion of that would imply that there's a recognition that if the Board of Selectmen thought that you maybe didn't ask for enough, I mean, the board might be able to hear it and say, Chief, I think you need 4 or 5. But there's something implied in there that would allow this board to look at that requirement under its licensing authority for alcohol.
Only if the licensee appeals it.
Right.
It's, otherwise we don't.
Correct. But
So,
why would you
I doubt
have?
very much that the plaintiff would come and say to you, well, I don't think I have enough. I don't think the chief has given me enough. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't say, it
Right.
gives you a right, but then it doesn't say, and the board shall have the authority to overturn the chief's decision. It doesn't say that.
I actually agree with you, and that's always a danger when you appeal something. We may decide something different.
The licensee may appear to review and establish appropriate public safety measures for such events. The licensee may appear before the Board of Selectmen, who shall review and establish appropriate public safety measures. And I'm just wanted to fix a couple of things. Board of Selectmen, instead of the word "to," Chief, if it said "who shall," because I think that's what you mean, the Board of Selectmen, who shall review and establish appropriate public safety measures for such events. I think if they appear before us, we're going to review it.
Okay.
Would that make that one change? And I think it's clear
So-
that they can come here and,
Just so I make sure I have this, because after, whatever your vote is tonight, I would mail this out as part of the whole liquor regulation package to all the licensees.
yeah.
And
I'm
if
satisfied
we have
with that.
applicants in the future, when they come in, they should get a copy of this along with the application.
Okay. I would,
Can I just read it back one more time?
Absolutely.
The license granting authority, comma, who shall review and establish appropriate measures. Is that,
I think that's
Did I-
that's the change I'm asking for.
I have that correct?
That's what he said.
Okay.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone wanting to be heard?
Yeah, I got a few things.
Mr. Groves?
Hey, Walter Groves, VFW manager.
Welcome.
I talked to a few of the other establishments around, like we always do, between I talked to the chief a few times. A lot of us feel the number's too high. 400 people should be a lower number. I'll give you a little short example of VFW, 130 people, a fight broke out. This was a little while ago. The officer that was on duty, he was about 6'8", 6'10", 300 pounds. He was on the ground in 2 minutes. He crawled out the back door, and it took 15 minutes for police to get there. And Mansfield, I think, was one of the first cars to get there. He had to call for backup, then they had to get state.
Are you prevented from asking for,
No, I think the chief knows well enough. When I have people come in and want to rent the hall, I only hold 200 people.
right,
At certain parties, like kids from high school, I rented out to them to use the van. I learned over years, make them get a detail. They pay for it.
right.
That protects me because
the town has shortchanged funding for so many years. It takes 15, 20 minutes for a police car to get to East Foxborough. And if it's 3 cruisers on at night, they're up a Route 1 inside of a building, that's a half a mile long each way. What good are they gonna be to the rest of the community to get to East Foxborough?
I don't think there's anything that would prohibit the VFW from asking the
No, I
police.
still do, but what I'm saying is, the number is too high. Even the mass sprinkle law, I told the chief to look at the mass sprinkle law. Anybody that gets alcohol license and everything else, 100 persons or more, goes to the building inspector, the fire department, and public safety, which is the chief. They put a cap on it as 100 people looking for protection. I don't understand, but 2 officers in any kind of building, unless they have bouncers or outside security, they're gonna get their ass kicked.
Okay.
So in the short version of it. And it's it's a savings for the town, because it's not costing you nothing. The detail's paying for it. If you rent the hall out for the movie theater with 500 people and they have 2 bar sections, the chief should have 8 officers in there. Plus whatever goes on outside, that's separate. The guys aren't gonna run outside, just like the VFW. They don't check IDs unless they're asked to check one that we think is fraudulent. All they do is maintain a presence to keep, liquor under control and keep the majority of the crowd quiet. So none of us have a problem with the law. It's just we feel the numbers are too high, and the chief should have more jurisdiction over that number. That's basically.
I appreciate your input.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the proposal for the section 14, the update proposal for section 14A of Foxborough liquor regulations as handed in on the chief on the yellow paper with the change in the 3rd line from the bottom, from the word to the words who shall.
Second that.
Is there any further discussion? Linda?
I know that you had sent it out to other folks, and thank Mr. Groves for coming up, but was there any other feedback from any other owners?
Yes, it was.
And was it all in favor, or was there concerns?
Just some of the wording changes that I incorporated in the changes.
Okay.
But other than that, and I talked with that particular individual. They didn't appear to have any problems with the overall process.
In the craft organization, I know that Dan was here that for.
Correct. In fact, I had a conversation
Peter Tan was
with
there
Mr.
that night.
Murphy earlier today about it, as well as their legal representation.
All right, good.
Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a liquor regulation.
That is correct.
What is before us at town meeting, Andy? There was a petition.
A petition article, Paul, for the bylaw.
Okay. Similar, though. I think they cross paths a little bit.
Well, I think this one
Homes are gathering.
is affects establishment throughout the community. I think the one is geared to the S1 district, Chief.
That's correct.
I'm somewhat conflicted. I mean, I think, I agree that the number does seem to be a little high. I'm certainly not a public safety expert, and I defer to the chief on that, but it does seem to me, just as a layperson looking at it, that's a little high. I supported a much stronger version of this, every time it's come before this board. I think we've gone a little bit too far to kind of remove some of the teeth that I'd like to see the chief have, but I do struggle with it because it is something. It is a notification requirement that I think is important. But in having done the math, I think at this table, I think this is going to pass tonight, and I'm going to vote no on it. I think it doesn't go far enough. I think there's something before us at town meeting that's going to have a lot more teeth and would accomplish more what I want to accomplish anyways as far as public safety. So I'm going to vote no on this tonight.
Chief, you happy with this?
Well, the intent is to provide notification when we have large groups having events. There is a prior section that gives me the authority to assign police details that is under our liquor regulations. This gives me the information then I can make that determination.
And my position, Paul, if it's not sufficient for the chief to properly regulate the consumption of alcohol, then we will visit it and if necessary, amend it. It has been an ongoing process. I know, the Chief, you've worked hard on the drafts.
Correct.
And you have brought a number of diverse groups together to try to craft something that is acceptable. If it doesn't go far enough, I think we'll hear about it. And Paul, I don't think that it is mutually exclusive with the bylaw that's proposed for the S1 district. I think that stands on its own merit. So I appreciate what you've said, but I'm going to vote in favor of this. Anybody else?
I would just point out that I believe the chief has always had the authority to assign safety personnel and detail personnel to a venue. And so this doesn't take away from that. It just gives an added measure of notification requirement, and that's the important piece I think the chief is looking for, so I'm supportive of this.
Anything else? Put it to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 1. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. If I know you're running very late, and I apologize.
We're right on time.
Yeah, you're
Pardon?
fine.
We're right on time.
We're close.
Okay. At the last meeting, we were talking about types of ways to identify people and to make sure that appropriation. And this was a device that was actually demonstrated to one of my staff members. And I bought this one so that he'll be able to use it on the road. And if one of you could pony up your license, you could see from yourself how easy it is. It's, it doesn't require plug-in or any electronic devices, but it allows you to see certain things on the license that you ordinarily, everybody's valid. That's what I wanted to make sure.
The 3 of us never put those licenses out there, Chief.
Paul and I live with confidence. Paul and I are confident.
It's a way to determine whether a license is authentic.
That's correct. You'd be looking
Oh,
at...
give me mine back.
You're only 18? But it gives you a way that you can take a look at the micro printing that is done now on the license that, as good as computer systems are, they are unable to accomplish that, and also some hidden holographic devices, because there are 2 lighting devices. There's a regular light that would light it up and magnify the micro printing, and the other one is a black light device that would also show up on the license. And it's a much more reasonable expenditure, but it would give them better access. And the reason we just target the mass licenses, thank you, Paul.
They're okay.
They're okay.
All right.
But the reason we're doing that is the only protection a license holder has against the use of a fraudulent license is if the person presents a Massachusetts license. If somebody offers and they accept a Rhode Island license that later is found to be false, they could be held responsible for that service, even though the person has given them a fraudulent out-of-state license. And just as a follow-up, I was in contact with one of the distributors in the area, and we'll be sending out to all the liquor license holders an updated identification book that talks about specifics of out-of-state licenses, and in particular the Massachusetts licenses. Yours is much newer than Bob's or my own, because I'm coming up on my renewal. But the newer licenses have some built-in security features.
Fantastic.
Great.
I
Thanks,
just
Chief.
wanted to demonstrate that, and I'll be contacting the liquor license holders just to make them aware if they wanted some additional methodology.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we had an add-on, one additional item on the action list, Andy.
Yes.
A long-winded one.
Chief, did you want to take your copies back, or?
Okay.
This one?
Yes, right.
Yeah, those are-
I have all the forms that the board has to sign. It's a vote that has to be read into the minutes by the clerk of the board relative to the borrowing we're doing for the Witch Pond wells. There are a number of documents that have to be signed by the board afterwards.
Is this in the form of a motion? Andy?
Yes, but
I move that. I, the clerk of the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Foxborough, Massachusetts, certified that a meeting of the Board held on March 25th, 2008, of which meeting all members of the Board were duly notified, and at which a quorum was present. The following vote was passed, all of which appears as official record of the Board of my custody. Voted, 1, that the town shall issue a bond of bonds in the aggregate principal amount not to prevent $4.3 million. The bonds pursuant to Chapter 29C and 44 of the General Laws and vote of the town passed May 10, 2004, Article 14, which amended the votes of the town passed May 11, 1998, Article 7, and November 20, 2000, Article 2, for the drinking water project identified as such vote as the project. Number 2, that in anticipation of the issuance of the bonds of the treasurer is authorized to issue an interim loan note or notes, the notes, from time to time in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $4.3 million. 3, that each bond or note shall be issued as a single registered security and sold to the Massachusetts Water Pollution Abatement Trust, the trust, at a price determined pursuant to the loan agreement. Number 4, that the treasurer is authorized to determine the date, the form, the maximum interest rate, and the principal maturities of each bond and note, and to execute a loan agreement or agreements with the trust with respect to the sale of bonds and notes, such date, form, maturities, and the specific interest rate or rates of the bonds and notes to be approved by a majority of the Board of Selectmen and the treasurer as evidenced by their execution of the bonds or notes. Number 5, that all action taken to date by the town, its officers, and agents to carry out the project and its financing, including the execution of any loans, commitment, or agreement by the treasurer, are hereby ratified, approved, and confirmed. And number 6, that the treasurer and other appropriate town officials are hereby notified, authorized to take any and all action necessary and convenient to carry out the provisions of this vote, including execution and delivery of the loan agreements and the project regulatory agreements relating to the project. I further certify that the vote was adopted at the meeting open to the public, that no vote was taken by secret ballot, that notice stating the plate, the time, and date of the meeting was filed with the town clerk, and a copy thereof posted in the office of the town clerk or on the principal official bulletin board of the town at least 48 hours, including Saturdays but not Sundays and legal holidays, prior to the time of the meeting, and remain so posted at the time of the meeting, that no deliberations or decision in connection with the sale of bonds and notes was taken in executive session, that the official record of the meeting was made available to the public promptly and remains available to the public, all in accordance with General Law, Chapter 39, Section 23B, as amended. I further certify that the vote has not been amended, supplemented, or revoked, and remains in effect in this date, dated March 25th, 2008.
Second.
Breathe, Bob, breathe.
This is the bonding of the
Which Pond Wells project?
Which Palm Wells.
Randy was watching at home when I began reading it. Got in his car, got dressed, got in his car, came down, parked.
It was on Bandorama.
No, that would have happened if I read it.
And still maintain the proper speed limit.
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
Or we would have tasered him.
Ow.
Okay, is there any discussion on that?
just at this point in time, we're going out for an interim note in the amount of $200,141, and the interest rate is 1.46% per annum.
How do we get such a great interest rate?
from the state. This is through it's called the trust at the state level, Massachusetts Water Pollution Abatement Trust. And they provide interim financing at these fantastic rates. And then ultimately, when the full project is completed and bonded at the $4.3 million, the rate will be 2%, maybe even be slightly less than that.
It sounds like it just covers their clerical costs.
I mean, it's part of larger bond offerings that are done, and it's a part of a state subsidy that's passed back to all cities and towns who are eligible for the program.
Motion
been made and
second.
seconded.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Anything else?
What's the amount of this?
This note here, the interim
Yeah.
loan note, 200,141.
James, you have the phone bills. Did they contact you back to tell you you were coming next day or whatever?
When I did it regularly, I had a regular shift.
Okay.
Anything else, Andy?
That's all I have.
Anybody have any old business? New business?
I'd just like to mention that Thursday night there's going to be a meeting here at Town Hall at the Selectmen's Meeting Room. 7 o'clock. It's sponsored by the Reservoir Restoration Commission, or the NRC, relative to the execution or implementation of proposed work on the deposit reservoir, as was originally defined in the phosphate presentation, 4 years ago now, out at the Borough Schools. So it's been a long-running project. A lot of people worked very hard on this, and I would encourage anybody who's interested in the health of the reservoir to come out Thursday night at 7 o'clock, and the topic is going to be herbicide treatment.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else? I have a few things. We had a discussion last week with the attorneys that represent the New England Patriots Group regarding the form that was being generated when liquor licenses were being issued at Patriot Place. And there was a public discussion here. I first would like to point out that the applicant at the time really didn't have anything to do with it. And it wasn't my intent to put that applicant in the middle. Probably would have been better for me to have waited and had the discussion with the developer, not necessarily with another applicant. And for that, if I caused any distress to that applicant or in any way, I didn't mean to, and I apologize. We did ask John Tewig to look into the document. John did. We were contacted by representatives of Patriot Place. I know I spoke to Ted Fire, and maybe he reached out to other members of the board. He worked with the town manager to revise the form, to make it acceptable and clear that it is in no way a town fee or town issue. It doesn't have anything to do with us. We've been eliminated, and the draft was in a form that was acceptable to the town manager. And I'd just like to make sure that we all know that. Foxboro Housing Authority has an open house. I actually didn't open this until today. The open house is tomorrow. I can't make it. It's 10 o'clock. Is anybody going to be able to make it?
Mark or I will make it more like
Mark or Bob, 10 o'clock at the Historic Victorian. Thanks for that. We also got an invitation from Friends of Camp St. Augustine to attend a annual member and informational meeting for Thursday, March 27th. They were looking for an RSVP, so if anybody can attend that.
We all discussed that one early, James. We were kind of hoping you could take that possibly, because
I won't be there,
yeah,
Mark.
Paul,
I'm completely booked right now for a few weeks.
we are all booked up, that's
So
for sure.
I don't know if anybody will be there. We got a letter in the information pack. This is something that has come up a number of times. We talked to cable access, and this letter was from Attorney Epstein. It was to talk to Verizon about this FiOS system and about our bylaw. And Attorney Epstein's recommendation is that we do that. I'd like to have that meeting here. Paul and Mark, you have traditionally recused yourself from that. Attorney Epstein's recommendation is to meet with FiOS, discuss the plan to construct Verizon, to discuss their FiOS plan, to invite Attorney Salisbury, who drafted the bylaw. Attorney Epstein is willing to attend, and certainly the town manager. So I'd like to do that. Let's move that forward and put them on for, at some point, we have 3 meetings in April.
Right,
Maybe if you can look at, towards the end of the month, sometimes that's light, that last meeting.
Right, yes, it is. Because the first meeting, we have several public hearings on applications, Class 2 license. Plus, I think we want to finalize the budget at the first
Right,
April
so
meeting.
if there's room at the last meeting of April, and at that time, we can take up some of the information that Attorney Epstein puts forward. That's consistent, I think, Bob, with what your position has been. Wait till we hear from Attorney Epstein. So I would say we follow his recommendation. Let's do that. Okay? There is, the McGinty room is now available. When we were building the public safety building, it was available for the public. That my understanding was it was available for the public. I don't know if we have established yet any protocol for using that, whether it's coordinated through the town manager
Actually,
or
it goes through
Chief O'Leary.
Actually, it goes, to myself and Chief McNamara, we've tried to limit it to groups in our community that have residents involved. For example, I know we've had several meetings from the Neponset.
The NRC, sure.
NRC have been there. The planning board has been using the meeting room for several of the meetings they've had. We've used it for both police and fire service training, as well as a couple of community programs that I've done with the senior triad, during the day, that they've come over and used the training facility when we're showing more of a prevention program. For example, last Wednesday, the senior triad had the American Red Cross giving them hints on disaster preparedness.
Is it, have you developed a form for if a community group wants to use the room? Is there a form they fill out or procedure? How?
They could contact my secretary. She takes the information, then we compare with the master schedule that we have, to make sure that it's in keeping with, opening it up to the community, but also being respectful that there are other needs. We can't guarantee that everyone's going to get necessarily a time frame, and we maintain a running calendar that's updated that shows. In fact, if you came in the lobby now, there's actually a place where you can see what has been scheduled for March and into April for the McGinty room.
So our policy is to allow. First of all, the room is in the public safety building, and if either public safety department needs to use the room for whatever their purposes are, that's going to take the priority. That's what it's there for. Second, we've sold it, in a sense, to the town as a place where community groups, not necessarily just town groups, but community groups can use it.
Correct.
If they want to use it, they need to contact either you or Chief McNamara. And all I'm suggesting is that we have some kind of uniform system so that maybe there's a form they fill out telling who the group is, who the local resident is that's going to be responsible for the group, whether they have to come in advance and check the schedule, so they're notified if they can get bumped, those kinds of things. Maybe formalize it a little bit more.
Okay.
Is that too much to ask?
If I may, I think the system's working currently just as it does here. They call Sandra for this room, and if there's space available, then they're able to use it. Same thing with that room. And I had to negotiate a little bit with a couple of the groups up there to figure out a time that would be available on a monthly basis. And Donna's great to work with. She's at the business line number, the 543-4343 number. All that she's asking for is confirmation that it's a community, civic, or nonprofit group, which is typically all we need here. So I'm never against the form, but at the same time, it seems to be a system that's working out well. Maybe we just need to publicize it.
Well, I think it's new. I don't think we have seen, once it becomes available and as space gets increasingly tight, I think it would help the department, would help whoever's booking it to have a form to say, yes, you need to fill out our Form 1, come down, fill it out, we'll have it on record. Then if the chief has any questions about whatever group it is that's coming in, you and Chief McNamara, between you, can decide whether or not it's a group that ought to use the room. I would assume at some point regular groups will say, hey, this is a great place to meet. We want to be here every Thursday in October or every Thursday of every month, that kind of thing. So
Subcommittees, anything.
it may sound like overkill, but if it's not too much trouble, if you could, so if there's anybody interested and they say, how do I get the room? I say you contact them, you fill out the form, do what is necessary, and arrange the booking. I had a couple of other items, but I'm going to hold them until next month. That's all I have.
Jim, can we go back to the situation with the letter that was found and the question that we asked Huig?
Sure.
I don't know if it's general housekeeping or what we call it, but maybe if we find something like that, maybe we should have Andy give a call up to the stadium. I know that it kind of came at us last minute, and the attorneys happened to be in the room, but, headline in the newspaper, top line is, $125,000. It just seemed, we can't stop the press, but I
Jeff
just think
Peterson writes what he wants. That's his prerogative.
Right,
He's
and
the
I
press.
just, if there was something that we could do to maybe give a phone call up there and ask, or, instead of.
Yeah, I think
we worked through all of
I
that.
think it's a pretty embarrassing situation in that I think that what's gone on and the real work that happens is just communication, as you're saying, Linda, and I think Andy's done some of that communication.
We
And
worked
it
through
sounds as though
Okay.
everything's been worked through, and I was a little embarrassed at the meeting, and quite frankly, National Amusements probably need not be involved with that, and I think Jim's addressed it. And
Yeah. Right, and they responded in the paper also, so
Yes.
but
Well,
I just,
Between meetings, we've all met
Okay,
We figured around and worked it through.
okay.
A little clarification.
Sometimes things,
Just-
sometimes
yeah.
things happen.
I don't like reading things in the paper when I'm
From our-
going on the board of
You-
selectmen,
The
you know.
longer you're here, the more used to it you get.
Okay, well,
That
I
doesn't
guess
make
I
it
get
right,
some
though.
time.
More ways young.
Anything else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, by my time away, I mean, I guess I'm confused on why members of this board would feel any type of embarrassment at what was brought up. I mean,
Well, because we inserted ourselves in a private business matter, and also this board reviewed, approved, and negotiated the liquor licenses, and it's not specific to that. It's we interfered or intervened in a matter that didn't have anything to do with us. This board negotiated and signed off on the mitigation package, a significant portion of which was pass-through costs. So we knew, maybe not you two because you weren't on the board at the time, but we knew that the costs generated to the town to pay for the public safety and the municipal impacts was going to be a pass-through cost.
If there had been no, if there was no negative implication that could have been made, then I don't think the form would have been changed. But because the form was changed and because the stadium group was so willing to talk to the town manager, say, yes, we maybe recognize that the form probably isn't in the form, the form's not in the form that makes the most sense. I think that our having addressed it at that time dispelled any further conclusion that someone could draw that we were in any way involved in whatever fees the developer was recovering to cover that mitigation cost.
And as,
So-
and as we've discussed many times, I think we just have a different way of approaching things, and so I think
Well,
the end result, as Jim points out, is correct, in that they changed a form that was potentially misleading, and the pass-through costs are legitimate, and we approved it and actually negotiated that.
I think over time, Bob, I've become increasingly more like you, and I want to take up the public's business in the public's
You don't
forum.
have to.
Well,
That's the place
that's
for
the
it.
only reason I bring it up, Jim, and not to inflame any issues or anything else.
Sure.
You were clear earlier how you felt about it. I just, you know, I mean, in Bob, as you were just saying, and as one-fifth of the board, you understood that before you read that document, or as you read that document. Yeah, but I certainly didn't, and apparently the chairman didn't, and how other board members feel, I don't know. But, you know, if I see that, and there's, you know, a document that says Town of Foxborough, and I have the same questions that were raised, you know, I'm certainly not gonna not ask the question and say, well, you know, it's not something I want to bring up in fear of embarrassing anybody. I mean, that's, you know, that was part of my package. If I had a question, I'm not.
Let me first.
Well, Paul, finish.
Excuse me,
Then
Chairman,
Mark.
if I have a question, I'm certainly gonna bring it up at the table, and that's, I don't think any member of this board should ask any other member or insinuate that shouldn't be brought up.
I sincerely hope you're not hearing me say that, because that's not all I'm saying.
Can we go to Mark after, Paul, are you finished?
Yeah.
Mark?
All I'm saying, I think I'm trying to understand what everybody's saying. You gotta remember, you can treat the Foxborough company one way, you can treat Inverses, I never pronounced that right. Inventus one way, and you can treat the Patriots another way. I think a courtesy call might have been a better approach if I was to do it. Just to say, hey, what is this? Because every time we work to such a degree to get to the point we need something, we're all, personally, $960,000 I go up there early to get. I try for the town to get something early for them. And then they get bad publicity 4 or 5 months earlier, you know, and then something happens, and then all that work I went to nothing. So I spent 2 months working on something, and then we had another bad call, and it didn't come to fruition.
What were you working on?
I was working on getting $960,000 from them 5 months early, so we could gain the interest per day, so we could pay for some of the small IT things around here and everything else.
Did we get that money early?
No.
Okay.
Because there was another negative article. The crucial negative press. They deserve it. They get it. I've done it myself before in the past, where I've told them point blank, you know, especially with our mitigation team. I was very upset, especially with the town, with the planning board closing the public hearing before we were done with our committee, and I made myself very vocal. But I'm just saying, we need to be a little bit cautious about accusations from this board, which that was, the way I saw it was an accusation. Whether they were right or wrong, I don't know the full extent of the outcome, but I didn't appreciate seeing the town's name on that piece of paper either, but it could have been taken care of without the article that was written, is all I'm gonna say.
Well, we don't have a control of the newspaper, Mark, and wasn't the document in the package? So
Correct.
you could have made if you had a question on it, you could have made the call before the meeting, and then had the information when the issue came up.
But
So
I didn't, I'll be honest, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it until I talked to Randy.
that's why it came up. In any
Yep.
event, it happened, the town's name was on it, the town's been removed, it doesn't have anything to do with us. Andy's satisfied that we're out of it. We've managed it, we go forward. There are at least 8 more licenses, I think, that are available up there. And we don't control what the newspaper writes. So, we do the public's business in the public forum. That's our duty.
But we do have public officials who are quoted in the newspaper make comments that, when quoted or taken in a context different than what was intended, have the appearance of meaning something different and furthering a view. And I think the embarrassment I felt was not about asking questions. Everybody, that's what our role is, and we all ask questions. Sometimes it's the manner, and sometimes it's a question versus an interrogation. And I think the way the conversation went last week was very difficult to quantify in the terms of a question, as opposed to, and for lack of a better term, a cross-examination. And I thought that the outcome, the end of the meeting, was positive in that you asked Attorney Tuvig to get the information and come back. And that's the way it should have gone. And the follow-up work with Andy, and then through you as chairman, is the way it should have gone. They amended their form. It's less confusing. It certainly no longer appears as though it's a Town of Foxborough document, which it never was. Should not have had that appearance. And then we move on. So I was hoping we weren't going to bring it up, but since we brought it up, it's a good conversation to have. In no way would I ever discourage anybody to ask a question. It's more the tone and the manner that we went about it as a board. The end result was what should have happened. It's just unfortunate we ended up with a newspaper article that made it appear as though there's an investigation occurring.
So, I mean, am I right, Bob, then I think that we all agree as a board that there was no mistakes made in last week's meeting, or 2 weeks ago? That everything was handled exactly the way it should have? Question was asked and it was resolved?
A question was asked, and it was resolved. Would I have done it differently? Yes.
Fair enough.
But that's why there's 5 of us here.
Anything else? Motion that we exit regular session to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing collective bargaining.
Second?
Does this gentleman want to say anything about that?
You just
Motion made and
tonight,
seconded.
or?
We're closing.
We're fun to watch.
I was here to listen to the CTAC discussion.
Very good.
You guys stay around because of the Verizon mention.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We didn't mean to put you on the spot. We just want to make sure you had a voice if you wanted it.
We will exit executive session for the sole purpose of adjourning the meeting.
Second.
It's a double motion there, Paul. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Roll call vote.